All right. Well, it is 5:31. We will get started with this meeting. According to Minnesota Statute 13D.021, it allows meetings to be conducted by telephone or other electronic means under the following conditions. The mayor has determined an in-person meeting or a meeting conducted under section 13D.02 is not practical because of health pandemic. The mayor and all councilors participating in the meeting can hear one another and can hear all the discussion. Attendance by the public is not feasible due to a health pandemic. At least one member of the city council is physically present at the meeting unless unfeasible due to the health pandemic. All votes are conducted by roll call, so each member's vote on each issue can be, give me 1 second, there we go. Each member's vote can be identified and recorded. As you hear, we have multiple people that are still coming on. I am keeping track of everyone that has came into our meeting. Currently, we have 13 members that are with this meeting today. At this time, our first meeting or item on our agenda is to approve the agenda with the additions and one deletion. Item number 3 under new business is going to be deleted and pushed forward at a new time, which was the Pride Week 2020 request for banner and use of Smokey Bear Park and Adorn Smokey with Smokey Bear during the week of June 15th through the 20th per Doug Judson. We have contacted them, and just based off of the information and the inability to be able to meet with the council and discuss what we had asked for, we're going to hold off on that, and they were very willing to do that. We also have an addition, which is resolution authorizing the City of International Falls to be a party of the Minnesota Water Agency Response Network and to approve the Minnesota Water Agency Response Network Mutual Aid Agreement. City Council, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda with one deletion and the 2 additions.
So moved.
We have a motion by Councilor Kraus.
Second.
We have a second by Councilor Buller. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, I will call roll call. Councilor Deitch, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilor Nelson?
Aye.
Councilor Kraus?
Aye.
And Councilor Buller?
Aye.
And I will vote yes. The motion carries 5-0 to approve the minutes. Our next item on the agenda, to approve the agenda. Our next item on the agenda is to approve the minutes from Monday, March 16th, 2020, which was a special city council meeting. Chair would entertain a motion to accept those minutes.
Councilor Deitch, aye.
Councilor Deitch has a motion to approve those minutes. Do we have a second?
I can second.
We have a second by Councilor Kraus. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion from the council member? Hearing none, Councilor Deitch, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilor Nelson?
Aye.
Councilor Kraus?
Aye.
Councilor Buller?
Aye.
And I will vote yes. Motion carries. We will approve the minutes from March 16th, the special city council meeting. Next, we have the minutes from the regular city council meeting on March 16th, 2020. Board or chair would entertain a motion to accept those minutes.
So moved.
We have a motion by Councilor Buller. Do we have a second?
Second. Councilor Deitch.
We have a second by Councilor Deitch. Any discussion? Hearing none, Councilor Deitch.
Aye.
Councilor Nelson.
Aye.
Councilor Kraus.
Aye.
Councilor Buller.
Aye.
And I will vote yes. Motion carries 5-0. And finally, our special city council meeting on Friday, March 27th. It was a special emergency city council meeting to declare a city emergency. Chair would entertain a motion to accept those minutes.
So moved.
We have a motion by Councilor Kraus. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Councilor Nelson. Any discussion? Hearing none, Councilor Deitch.
Aye.
Councilor Nelson.
Aye.
Councilor Kraus.
Aye.
Councilor Buller.
Aye.
And I will vote yes. Motion carries 5-0. Next, we have the transfer and payments of claims. Today, we have moving from city transfers from Fund 101, the general fund, to the 812 lodging tax fund of $92.31. The accounts payable, the City of International Falls regular claims, $450,366.45. Airport Commission claims of $31,730.41. The Airport Commission Terminal Project Phase 2 claims of $11,312.73. And Runway Reconstruction Project Phase 3 claims of $111,314.14 for a total in accounts payable of $604,723.73. The chair would entertain a motion to accept the payments of claims.
So moved. Councilor Deitch.
Councilor Deitch for a motion to accept the payments of claims. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second by Councilor Kraus. Any discussion? Hearing none, Councilor Deitch.
Aye.
Councilor Nelson.
Aye.
Councilor Kraus.
Aye.
Councilor Buller.
Aye.
And I will vote yes. Payments and claims passes 5-0. Next, we'll move to audience. I'm going to unmute everybody at this time. If you have something to bring up under audience, you'll have your opportunity at this time. Please mute yourself in the event that you do not want to talk and you're in the background. Is there anyone that wants to address the council at this time? Okay, if we did this incorrectly and you do want to address the council, please put something in the text. I don't know. We're trying to be as open as we can. I do believe everyone is unmuted at this time. We will move on. If we missed you, it is not intentional. All right. Next, we're going to go to our public hearing. This is the first reading of the ordinance, an amendment to shorten blight timelines and enforce the process contained in sections 10 through 51 and 1099. Administrator Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. Briefly, this particular ordinance was initiated by the City Council with the goal to try and reduce some of the time frames that we had for processing blight enforcement.
Hold on, he can't hear you. You're going to have to go into your microphone or be louder.
Thank you. To continue, this particular ordinance is an ordinance amendment that was initiated by the City Council. The goal was to shorten timeframes on blight enforcement and then also to make some alterations to the enforcement process. So, as I mentioned, it was discussed at the last meeting. We've included this ordinance number 24, 5th series. It's titled An Ordinance Amending the Code of Ordinances, Section 1051, related to prevention, reduction.
Difficult to hear.
Hey, Ken, do you want to just come over here and be closer to the microphone? Would that help?
You're using the conference call, right?
Yes. So, yeah, if you want to sit here for the meeting, that would be maybe better. We're going to go back and start that over.
Thank you. Briefly, the ordinance amendment is focused on shortening timeframes for blight enforcement, as well as notifying persons of violations of our blight ordinance. So the referenced ordinance is found in section 1051 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of International Falls. And we've got a ordinance that's about 2 1/4 pages long. There's some minor revisions that are shown as strikeouts, and those are deletions from the existing language. And then there's some additional insertions, which are shown as underlines in the draft ordinance. These particular revisions were crafted by the city attorney, and essentially, as I pointed out, he was revising language to discuss the process that we go about with blight identification and enforcement. So I don't know that I have anything specific to say other than that, unless the City Council has any questions first, and then I can take questions from the public.
Okay, first, does the council members have any questions with the ordinance 24 of the 5th series?
I got a question, Council or Mayor Droba.
Yes.
Has the building inspector and the housing inspectors gone through this, and they agree with it also?
I believe Kelly Myers is on the line. Kelly, do you have something to bring up with this?
I'm not sure. Can this come through, Harley?
Yep, I hear you just fine.
Okay, yeah, I have gone through it. I think he did a good job relating to it about as good as we could. So to answer your question, yes, I have reviewed it and liked what he did.
Great, thank you.
Is the city attorney on the line right now?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I am on the line.
Do you want to speak to the changes?
Well, yes, and we discussed them at the meeting a couple weeks ago. Did add 2 minor changes to the enforcement and penalties section that are now reflected in this first reading. And what we've done is streamline the process so that we're basically looking at 7-day requirements to handle blight things that are not related to buildings or structures. This really goes to grass or junk in the yard, old vehicles, those types of things. And so in accordance with the desires of the council, we have streamlined and shortened the provisions in this ordinance, and I would recommend that the council approve it. I think it accomplishes what you wanted to do.
Okay. With that being said, I think that we have a little bit of background information at this. I would accept a motion to have the first reading of the ordinance, and if we have a motion and a second, I will also open it up to public comment in the event that anyone from the public would like to discuss the ordinance that we're talking about. So at this time, the chair would entertain a motion to have the first reading of ordinance 24 of the 5th series.
So moved, Councilor Deitch.
So we have a motion by Councilor Deitch to have the first reading. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second by Councilor Buller. Any discussion? Anybody from the audience that would like to discuss the ordinance on blight that the city has before us? This is not the final reading of this. This is the first time we're reading it. There will still be more additional time that you can speak on the specific ordinance. But is there anyone that would like to come forward and speak on this at this time? Hearing none, any councilors have anything that they would like to add? Hearing none, I will call the question. Councillor Deitch.
Aye.
Councillor Nelson.
Aye.
Councillor Kraus.
Aye.
Councillor Buller.
Aye.
And I will vote yes. The motion carries 5-0. Next is the first reading of the next ordinance that we're looking at, which concerns to the building code permits and regulations. It is an amendment so that the inspector and enforcement process for blighted buildings contained in sections 420 and 499 of the International Falls Code of Ordinances. Again, City Administrator.
Very briefly, Mayor and Council, this particular ordinance was also part of the Council's initiated revisions to Chapter 4 of the City Code. And the City Attorney has crafted revisions to this particular ordinance. And he and I had spoke some this afternoon about some modifications that he had made to what was sent out to the Council on Friday. And I received a correspondence from the housing inspector, which is the fire chief, and asked the fire chief if he was comfortable with the ordinance and its proposed revisions, and he said that he was. So I won't go into any more detail on it, but I would suggest that the council hear comments from the city attorney as well.
City Attorney.
Mr. Mayor and Council, with regard to these change to ordinance 4-20, Mr. Anderson's correct that after reviewing it over the weekend and this morning, I emailed out to him and Adam and Kelly some additional changes, and then Administrator Anderson and I spoke late this afternoon about including a couple additional items involving civil penalties. And it's my understanding that that the council members have not received copies of those changes, those alterations that were just made today. So it'd be my suggestion that we postpone this first reading of this proposed ordinance change till the next meeting, so that everybody has a chance to fully review these changes and suggestions. I think it accomplishes again what you wanted, and this ordinance deals with buildings, both houses and vacant structures such as a garage, and it's a more complicated process, a lengthier process than what we deal with on the other blight issues. But by streamlining things, I think we can accomplish everything within a 6-month time frame from beginning to end, which is my understanding of what the council desired. But I think we're probably not ready to move on this tonight.
Okay. Council's thoughts on the information given to us by the city attorney and the city administrator?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Oh, go ahead, Leon.
Okay. I would say we should move on it today if our inspectors are comfortable with it. They're the main enforcers. They're the ones that are going to make sure that these are held to our ordinances. I'm for going forward with this. As I say, we drag our feet so much. Both these ordinances has been a long time coming, and we're starting to move. I think we should keep moving on it.
Okay. Councilor Kraus.
Mr. Mayor, I would have to respectfully disagree. In due diligence, as the city attorney pointed out, the revisions were just finished today, and we didn't have an opportunity to review them and see all of the changes. I mean, if the rest of the council wants to go ahead with this, I don't have a problem with it, but I also wouldn't have a problem tabling it and having a discussion about it at the next meeting. It shouldn't change the timeline by all that much.
Okay. Councilor Nelson, do you have anything to add?
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. Sorry. I haven't had a chance to review them. I would be of this position that I would like to wait, just to have the opportunity to look at it.
Okay. Fair enough. Councilor Buller.
I agree that we should wait. 2 more weeks isn't going to hurt that much, and I'd like to review it also.
Okay. And I'm fine with waiting. I'd be also fine with moving forward. Not to sound wishy-washy, but just a question for the city attorney. In the event that we did do the first reading, we would still be able to do the second reading with changes. Is that correct?
I believe so. But if that, and I was, with regard to the early ordinance that we did, the 10-51, I was under the impression that we did the first reading 2 weeks ago, and today would have been the second reading. They were a couple of minor changes, but it was, in the agenda and everything as a first reading rather than a second reading. But it's my understanding that you are allowed to make revisions between the first and second reading.
Okay, fair enough. I understood. That's how I understood it as well. Does that change anybody on the council's opinion on waiting or staying?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
If we are allowed to make changes, that gives us an opportunity to review it. So I would change my position and say that we could certainly adopt the first reading today.
Okay. Councillor Nelson?
Am I unmuted?
Yes, you are.
Okay, perfect. I'm still hesitant, but if everyone else is okay going forward, how big of changes can we make? Is everything up for grabs? I mean, if that's the case, then let's just go ahead and get it done. I just don't want to get stuck in a position where we're stuck.
Right. And Councillor Buller, your thoughts on that?
I was not aware that we could make changes after the first one, so I would be in favor of going with it today also.
Okay. With that being said, the chair would entertain a motion on the first reading if the council so chooses.
Deitch, I'll make the motion.
Councillor Deitch makes the motion to approve the first reading of the ordinance to dealing with blighted building contained in sections 420 and 499. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second by Councillor Kraus. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, Councillor Deitch.
Aye.
Councillor Nelson.
Aye.
Councillor Kraus.
Aye.
Councillor Buller.
Aye.
And I will vote yes. Motion carries. So we will have a second reading of both of these ordinances in 2 weeks. So we will have updated information. And I can't imagine that it's going to be drastically changed. It should be just minor changes.
Mr. Mayor, this is Steve Shimon again. The changes are not major changes, and I'll have those incorporated into the document tomorrow and can get them with changes forwarded out to everybody. Or I'll send it to the city administrator and he can forward it to everybody else.
Okay, thank you. All right, next we go to old business, and this is part of the emergency response plan that the city came up with, and this is to consider closed accesses to both landings March 27th to April 6th, and we had discussed at our special city council meeting that we would discuss it again today to see if we want to keep those closed. At this point, I will just open it up for general dialogue between the councilors before we make any official motions. We'll start with Councillor Deitch. Do you have any thoughts on this?
I agree it should be closed for the time being. And basically, as we said before, for the outsiders that may be coming in, and I feel sorry for our locals that may not be able to use the ramps, but I think this is a necessity.
Okay. Councillor Nelson.
I agree that they do need to continue to be closed in any way that we can publicize that all of these are closed, because I have seen a few different state plates up here, and I don't know if they're coming for the fishing or what it's for, but anyway we can minimize the travel up here. I think we need to do that.
Fair enough. Councillor Kraus?
Regrettably, I too agree that we need to keep them closed.
Okay, and Councillor Buller?
I also agree we need to keep them closed. I don't know if we need to put a deadline on it or not, but I'm sure at least through the walleye opener or the walleye fishing, spring walleye fishing should be closed till at least the 14th, I think, when that ends. Then I think there's a week in between, and then there's sturgeon. I think at that point we need to make another call.
Okay, and my thoughts are we meet every 2 weeks, and we are in an emergency situation, so we can meet as an emergency council. With that being said, does anyone have a problem to put it through for the next 2 weeks until our next city council meeting, and we will reassess then?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Would you be looking for a motion at this time?
If you're interested, I am too.
So I would motion that we keep the boat landings closed and we will readdress it at the next regular city council meeting.
So we have a motion by Councillor Kraus. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
We have a second by Councillor Buller. Okay, any discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Again, I just want to point out that, as an outdoorsman myself, this is not an easy decision. And I'm not excited about this by any means, and I do feel bad for locals like myself that are being denied an opportunity to utilize the river, but I do believe that this is exceptionally important to maintain the safety of our residents and prevent the spread of COVID-19.
Fair enough. Any other councilors have anything to bring up on this? I will open it up. Everybody is unmuted at this time. If there's anyone in the audience of this meeting, you're welcome to come forward with your thoughts on keeping the boat landings closed for another 2 weeks. You may have to unmute yourself with *6. Okay, hearing none, I'll call the question. Councillor Deitch.
Aye.
Councillor Nelson.
Aye.
Councillor Kraus.
Aye.
Councillor Buller.
Aye.
And I will vote yes. Motion carries 5-0. We will readdress this in 2 weeks. We have nothing under the consent agenda. The first item under new business is the pandemic update. In your packet, you have a list of a handful of papers. The first was the release from Couchiching County Public Health and Human Services, and that is the letter that outlined that we do have our first positive case of COVID-19 in the county. As you read through it, it is pretty self-explanatory. The second item in there is a letter that I wrote to the residents of International Falls and to the council, and I believe you guys, all of the council members, were able to see that in their packet on our special city council meeting. It was also printed in the journal. Next, we have a letter which dictates that we are in a local emergency and what that means moving forward. And we have the declaration of the essential employee work declaration for the City of International Falls. City Administrator, do you have anything to bring forward to that?
Thank you, Mayor. I would just add that the last letter that you referenced, the Essential Employee Work Declaration, so that's a letter that went to each employee individually that indicates that they are an essential employee. And so if for some reason they would get stopped on their way to work or from work or to daycare for their children, etc., this letter would give them authority to be out during the stay-at-home orders that the governor has imposed. So essential workers are exempt from that, and this letter is authorization for them to be out. That's all I would add.
Okay. Thank you. And there's no action on that. That was just public information and for council. Next, we have the census update. I believe that this is slightly outdated information, but not by much. This is the information that we have here in your packet is the 2020 self-response by cities. International Falls has a 45.3% self-response rate. That is up slightly to about 48%, I believe, today. And Coochin County has a 34.7%, but they're up to about 44% now today. With that being said, the state of Minnesota is just above 50% self-response. So hopefully we can get those numbers up. We definitely need people to fill out the census now more than ever. I think we're all aware that your aid and a lot of the things that we're dealing with this pandemic, funding and resources go by census. So this has never been more important than it is right now. Again, that is just public and council information. Next, we will go to the request to waive exempt fees for the Nomad Motel. Miles Wilcock, are you on the line today? I have everyone unmuted. I don't see you on the line. Anyways, Administrator Anderson, you want to give us background information on what the request is?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Wilcott is the new owner of the Nomad Motel, and he had submitted an email requesting that the City Council consider waiving or exempting certain fees that were charged prior to him being owner of the former Knights Inn. And those costs were assessed to the property and certified by the City Council and the county to those property taxes payable in 2019. He was seeking an exemption or waiver of having to pay those. He and I had corresponded in several emails back and forth, and I received the last response from him on Friday, and at that time he indicated to me he had business in Winnipeg today, could not be present for the meeting, and he further indicated that he has paid off those special assessments at Coochin County, but he might want to proceed further with some accommodations at some future point.
Okay. In some of the conversation that I had with Administrator Anderson, and I also spoke with Miles Wilcott through text messages back and forth, one of the things that he was looking at, and he outlined it pretty well on his letter to the administrator, he specifically is asking for sewer and water refund of $2,918.39, yard cleanup of $928.80, and then other, which was $198, and I don't know what that $198 would have been. With that being said, the conversation that I had with the city administrator and with Mr. Wilcott was, is there anything that we can do, since he had paid those assessments already? And the administrator said that the one option that we would have would be to do I can't think of the name of it. A developer's agreement. And I was just wondering, is that something the council's interested in? Is that something we're not interested in? Or should we just move on now that he's paid the assessments?
Mayor, if I
yes,
may,
please.
I would just add that these assessments were certified in 2018 for taxes payable in 2019. The city further certified, and by city I mean the City Council last fall, further certified an additional $1,200 primarily in yard maintenance costs that were incurred for 2019 for taxes payable in 2020. So he'll receive another it'll be on his property tax statement for payment in 2020 for roughly another $1,200.
Okay. What are the thoughts of the council, or is this something we want to just move forward with? Do we want to, I want to say send it to a committee so we can have a conversation about it, but we're not having committee meetings now. Is this something we want to push to the next city council, and maybe Mr. Miles Wilcott can discuss his position, or should we just move forward and the assessments were paid, the assessments were assessed?
Mr. Mayor, go ahead,
Go
Chelsea.
ahead, Joe. Okay. I would just have more questions for him. I sympathize with having all of these costs. I don't know if there was some sort of purchase agreement arranged or if this could have been worked into closing costs when he bought the property as a seller expense. I just would have more questions on it. Because if this was something negotiable and he decided he would pay it and now he's asking the city to just waive it, I would have some issue with it.
And I think that that's a very fair way of looking at it. The city administrator and I had that discussion a little bit today as well. So, Joe, Councilor Kraus.
I guess my question is, as I read the letter, has he paid it or has he not paid it?
He has paid it now.
He has paid it because in the letter, I don't see the word refund anywhere. I just see him waived, which it may be nomenclature, but it seems to me, for example, 13A, water and sewer, that's for actual services that were received. Water that was used, sewer that was used. 13B, yard cleanup, we paid a contractor to go clean that property up. So, I mean, these aren't fees as in, this isn't just a fee because you were late. These are fees for services that were provided to that property. Mm-hmm. So I have a hard time refunding them. I don't know what 13C is for $198. But again, as I read the letter, I don't see the word refund anywhere. It reads more to me like it hasn't been paid. So, but I mean, when you buy a tax forfeit property, you buy it with the assessments. I mean, this isn't new information.
And I agree with you as well, Councilor Kraus. And as I understand, they have been paid now, correct?
That's what he indicated Friday.
Yeah, he indicated with the city administrator on Friday that they have been paid. The only way that I look at this any differently than what I'm hearing from the council is we have lots of business. We don't have a lot of opportunities to help businesses when they first get going, and I don't really see this as any way that we can help right now anyways. But moving forward, if we have businesses, the only thing we have to give them right now is land. This would be so much cheaper than giving land than what we do with the multimodal site or anything like that. I mean, to be able to give water or sewer to help a business get up and running. But I also agree 100% with the questions that Councilor Nelson has, and I agree 100% with Councilor Kraus. So with that being said, I don't care how we move forward on this, but I do think we, as a request from the business owner, I think we definitely at least deserve to hear what his thoughts are on this.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yep.
I would agree. I would like to hear what Mr. Wilcott has to say about this. I have a hard time refunding a fee that's already paid for services rendered, and it's a very slippery slope. I don't know that it's necessarily going to help or hinder sales in the future of tax forfeit properties, but the fees are paid. Right. So I would like to hear what he has to say, but I have to admit I'm skeptical.
It would be a very hard one for me too, especially knowing that he bought the property with the assessments. So is it a general consensus of the council at this point that we will push this off to the next city council meeting and see if we can't have the business owner address the council?
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to table it for the next meeting to allow Mr. Wilcott to have an opportunity to speak.
Okay, we have second. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a second by Deitch and a second and a half by Councilor Nelson. Okay, do we have any discussion on the tabling until the next meeting so that Mr. Wilcott can discuss with the council? Hearing none, Councilor Deitch.
Aye.
Councilor Nelson.
Aye.
Councilor Kraus.
Aye.
Councilor Buller.
Aye.
And I'll vote yes. Motion carries to table 5-0. Next, we have to approve the order to mitigate blight conditions at 1318 First Avenue East. City Attorney, I believe you have an update on this particular piece.
I do, Mr. Mayor and Council. I got an email from Adam Manassa earlier today, and he inspected the property today, and most of the issues have been cleared up. There was one vehicle had expired taps, and now with the licensing office open, you have to do that through the mail rather than go down and do it in person. So Mr. Russo indicated that he had mailed to request those updated tabs, so then that would not be an issue. The only remaining issue, as I understand it, is a small blue building that needs to be relocated, but it's currently frozen into the ground. So Mr. Russo was requesting additional time of Chief Manassa to do that after the ground thaws some more, and the chief thought that was fine, and so it'd be my recommendation that we not take further action on this. It appears that the property owner has cleaned up the property for the most part.
And I would agree with that too, and I don't know if everyone's able to see the pictures that I have available, but these are the pictures that came out today, and comparably to the ones that are in your packet, the area is considerably more clean. The garbage bags have been removed. The trash that was in the back, all of it that were the issues that were in your packet have been updated, with the exception of the two things that the city attorney had mentioned. And I do believe that, correct me if I'm wrong, there was an issue with the front of the building that also still needs to be addressed, but they're working through that.
That wasn't addressed by Chief Manassa in his email to me, so I can't respond to that. I don't know if Administrator Anderson has more information than I do on that.
I do not.
He does not. So the council would, it would be the council's call if you want to continue this, but on the recommendation of the city attorney and the information that I'm seeing in the pictures that were offered to me today since our packets were given, I would definitely concur with the city attorney. So do we have I guess we wouldn't need a motion. Does everyone feel comfortable just moving on without providing more action? Councillor Deitch.
Mr. Deitch here. I have been watching this residence basically since last fall, and it has improved greatly. I watched him this weekend, and he worked pretty steady cleaning it up. It looks 100% better than it did, and as you said, there's a couple minor issues, but I would not move forward on any proceedings and hold off and see if these other few issues are taken care of.
Okay. Councillor Nelson, your thoughts?
I would agree with Councillor Deitch.
Okay. Councillor Kraus?
Yeah, I too would agree with Councillor Deitch. My only thought would be to potentially just hold on to this and maybe table it for a later meeting, just because we already have it written up. So if the final changes haven't been made, we wouldn't have additional work, if that makes sense.
Okay. And Councillor Buller?
I would agree with Councilor Deitch also, but I agree with Joey also. We need to keep it on our radar to make sure everything gets finished up.
Okay, so let's just not act on it this evening, and we'll leave it out there. And when the ground thaws, we'll leave it up to our department heads to follow up on this particular issue. Fair enough? Okay.
Sounds good.
Yes.
Next, we have I'm sorry. Was there someone that wanted to speak?
No, I just said I am in agreement with it.
Okay, sounds good. So then we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the mayor's appointment of Mona Johnson to the Library Board of Trustees to fill John Dalton's expiring term of December 31st, 2022. Chair would entertain a motion for that appointment.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Councillor Buller. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a second by Councillor Kraus. Any discussion? Councillor
Give
Deitch.
you a,
What's that?
go ahead.
Councillor Deitch.
Are you calling for a vote?
I am, I'm sorry.
Aye.
Councillor Nelson?
Aye.
Councillor Kraus?
Aye.
Councillor Buller?
Aye.
And I will vote yes. Motion carries 5-0. Next, we have the Planning Commission recommendations. Now, this was the first time that we used Skype, or I'm sorry, the first time we used Zoom was last week for our conditional use permits. We had a planning and zoning meeting, and they came up with 2 recommendations. The first of which would be to allow Andrea Ducharme at 1109 8th Street to allow rooming house tourist rental in a R1A zoning district. The council's chair would entertain a motion to accept that conditional use permit.
So moved.
We have a motion by Councillor Kraus. Do we have a second?
Councillor Deitch, second.
Councillor Deitch with a second. Any discussion?
Mayor.
Yes.
Mayor and council, just for information purposes, the Kelly Myers, the zoning administrator, had prepared a packet of information, and we do have a draft resolution of approval that would make findings of fact and identifies the decision recommended by the Planning Commission. So with the council's consent, we will have the motion reflect adoption of that resolution as written.
Okay. And as I understand, we have Max Ducharme online. Max, do you have anything to bring forward?
Not at this time unless there are specific questions.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Ducharme? All right, hearing none, I will call the question. Councillor Deitch.
Aye.
Councillor Nelson.
Aye.
Councillor Kraus.
Aye.
Councillor Buller.
Aye.
And I'll vote yes. Motion carries 5-0. All right, next we have a conditional use permit for Northern Options for Women. This was supplied by Vicki Bernard for 925 5th Street to allow for services in the R2A zoning district, allow offices for services in the R2A zoning district. It was, again, the findings of fact and the recommendation to approve. Chair would entertain a motion to accept that conditional use permit.
So moved. Deitch.
We have a motion by Councillor Deitch. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second by Councillor Buller. Any discussion? Administrator Anderson, you have anything?
I do not. Again, we have the draft resolution of approval, and it has findings of fact and comments from the Planning Commission, so the action in the minutes will reflect adoption of that if this motion goes forward.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Question, Councillor Deitch.
Aye.
Councillor Nelson.
Aye.
Councillor Kraus.
Aye.
Councillor Buller.
Aye.
And I will vote yes. Motion carries 5-0. Next, we have the debt management plan. I'm just going to hand this one right off to the city administrator.
Well, thank you, Mayor. Again, this is a draft debt management plan, and as the City Council is very familiar, we're proposing to move forward with a debt issue this spring, and the purpose of that issuance of bonds and incurring debt is to finance the local public improvements that we need to do in 2020 and 2021. And those improvements include street overlays, street reconstruction, some water main and some sewer main work, as well as storm sewer work throughout over 70 blocks in the community. So we'll be issuing or soliciting bids for construction work this spring, and then bonds will need to be issued to help pay that off over roughly a 12-year period. Now, in order to get the best interest rate we can on the issuance of bonds, we want to have a bond rating agency rate the bonds so that they'll be better received by investors in the marketplace. And the rating agencies, and we're proposing that Standard & Poor's be the rating agency that we ask to rate this particular general obligation sales and use tax bonds. It would be advantageous for them to have a rating on this because the bonds will be better received, and then we'll have a lower interest rate on the bonds. So one of the things that rating agencies look at are things such as capital improvement plan and a debt management plan. So I've crafted a debt management policy and plan here for the council to adopt, which would lay out how we would go about evaluating and preparing a financing plan that would include the issuance of bonds as a form of debt to pay for those costs. So we're asking that the City Council adopt this debt management plan, and then we will share this debt management plan with the rating agencies as well as any potential investors that might have questions about how we handle debt. My final comment is that the City of International Falls has been very, very conservative in issuing debt, and we've been debt-free for a very, very long time. And so this is something that we don't have a long track record or history on in terms of issuing debt. So again, that would be a reason why having a debt management policy would lay out standard criteria and process for doing so that would outlive staff and council members as we come and go. So I'm recommending approval of the debt management plan, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that anybody may have on the draft plan that's been included.
Administrator Anderson, I just have one question, and it's something that we've discussed with the Charter Commission and the way that we, how does this fit into the city charter now as it's written, since we had this adopted through the sales tax, correct? And then how does this look moving forward in the event that the city or the Charter Commission changes the charter to allow us to incur debt?
Well, that's a very good question. And so on page 2 of the debt management plan, there's a section called Limitations on Level of Debt to be Issued and Outstanding. And in that debt management policy, in that particular section, I've incorporated in somewhat briefer form all the limitations that we have in our existing charter. Mm-hmm. So presuming that the Charter Commission makes recommendations going forward to revise the charter, and the City Council adopts those changes, and I believe those changes have to be adopted unanimously for it to be effective, mm-hmm. or else it goes to a referendum before the public. But assuming that those changes would move forward, then we would need to revisit this debt management plan, and whatever the City Council would adopt as changes may affect the language that we have, particularly in this section called Limitations on Level of Debt to be Issued and Outstanding. So I've incorporated the existing limitations of the charter into this debt management plan.
Well, thank you. I think that answers my question quite a bit. Council, any questions on the debt management policy that is being provided? Hearing none, I would, Chair would entertain a motion to adopt the debt management policy.
So moved.
We have a motion by Councilor Kraus. Do we have a second? Kraus.
Second.
We have a second by Councilor Nelson. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
I just want to take this opportunity to thank Administrator Anderson. I did have an opportunity to go through the document, and I'm pretty excited. As you know, I don't take issuing debt lightly, but I think it's really important that we take advantage of these historically low interest rates on bonds. And I really feel that given the price of crude and other things that are down, we're going to have an opportunity to do some really amazing work this summer and next summer. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what the bids come back and seeing how it matches against our goals and our CIP.
Well, one of the things, and I guess it's not apples to apples or oranges to oranges, but one of the things that both myself and Councillor Buller ended up seeing is some of the bids that came in for the airport, and we were expecting it to be around 15 million, and it came in around 13 million. So, and correct me if I'm wrong on those numbers, Walt, but I know it was came in substantially under what we had expected.
Yeah, it was roughly about 3 million under, which was very nice.
Yes, so if we have the price of gas, price of crude, and everything is down right now, we may be hitting the perfect mix for getting road construction and getting our work done in the CIP for the next couple of years. So, anything else on the debt management policy? Hearing none, I will call the question. Councillor Deitch.
Aye.
Councillor Nelson.
Aye.
Councillor Kraus.
Aye.
Councillor Buller.
Aye.
And I'll vote yes. Motion carries 5-0. Next in our packet, we have the approval to Section 1, the composition of the board in the Joint Powers Agreement, establishing a joint recreational commission and defining its powers and authorizing the signatures. If we all remember back to very early in the year, I believe it was January, actually, it could have been November or December. We had asked the Rec Commission, which we're in a joint powers agreement with the school district, the Couchining Economic Development, which we're in a partnership with the county, and the Airport Commission, which we're in a partnership with the county, to allow some board member changes and allowing not as many city council members or school board members and or county board members to sit on those boards, so that we can allow more people in our community to be part of the governance system. With that being said, the Recreation Commission was able to make those changes, and now we have an updated paperwork of the Joint Powers Agreement, and this is to authorize signatures and adopt the wording. So the changes that we have will be basically, we used to have 3 members that had to be city council members on the rec board, or I'm sorry, yeah, on the rec commission, and the school district had 2 members that had to be school board members, and then they had 4 members at large. Now, with the changing of the wording, we will have 3 members, one of which will have to be seated on our city council. The school district will now have 3 members instead of 2, and they also have to have 1 member of the school board on their commission, but they can elect or put anyone else on as long as they're in their taxing district. And then those 6 people will elect 3 at-large members to the board. So those were the changes that came up, and I believe pretty much all of the conversations that went through, both Councillor Kraus and Councillor Nelson were in on those discussions. I would open the floor to either of them at this time if they would like to bring any information forward on this.
I have nothing to add, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Nelson?
I don't have anything to add either.
Okay, so at this time, the chair would entertain a motion to adopt the joint powers agreement with the change and authorize signatures.
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion by Councillor Nelson. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second by Councillor Kraus. Discussion? Hearing none, question, Counselor Deitch.
Aye.
Counselor Nelson.
Aye.
Counselor Kraus.
Aye.
Counselor Buller.
Aye.
And I'll vote yes, motion carries 5-0. Next, we have the public comments to the draft public right-of-way ADA transition for street sidewalks. Administrator Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor. Briefly, we, as the council might recall, back in early March, we had approved a draft public right-of-way ADA transition plan, and that plan is necessary to allow us to be eligible to receive federal funding through the Transportation Improvement Plan, and that work that must be done to comply with the Americans with Disabilities Act, which was adopted back in 1990. And so as part of that draft plan adoption, we posted it here at the municipal building as well as at the library for public review and comment. We published 2 notices in the Journal as well as on the website and on Facebook so that we could receive public comment on the proposed plan. And we closed comments, I believe, on March 23rd on the plan, and we received no comments. Those comments were directed to go to the Public Works Director. He said he received no comments, and the Administration Department staff received no comments from the public on the plan. So staff is requesting that the City Council adopt the Public Rights-of-Way ADA Transition Plan as it was presented, and that's what we're requesting the council's action for today, so that would make the city eligible for federal funds in the future.
Okay. With that being said, Chair would entertain a motion to accept the ADA transition plan.
I make a motion to accept it.
Okay, we have a motion by Counselor Buller. Do we have a second? Do we have a second?
Counselor Deitch will second.
We have a second. Any discussion on the public right-of-way ADA transition plan? Hearing none, I'll call the question. Counselor Deitch.
Aye.
Counselor Nelson.
Aye.
Counselor Kraus.
Aye.
Counselor Buller.
Aye.
And I'll vote yes, motion carries 5-0. Next, we go to approve the BDPI grant for submittal for the Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development related to the 22nd Street infrastructure improvements. Chair would entertain a motion for that grant submittal.
I move we make the grant submittal.
We have a motion by Counselor Buller. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch who the second was.
I'll second.
Second, Counselor Kraus. All right, just familiarizing both the council and the audience. This is a grant that we're going to be submitting to help offset the costs of doing the work on 22nd Street. We do not know if we're going to get it. However, we did put some good work into it, and I think that there is a good opportunity for us to get some funds. City Administrator, do you have anything to add to this?
Just briefly, Mayor, there's a few requirements for us to the submittal, and it's identified in the resolution right now. It's a 50% grant match, 50% local match. We do intend to assess some of the costs to the benefiting property owners. And right now, the estimated costs for the city are $349,012. We've identified a couple different sources of funds, and right now the balance in one of the sources is $347, so it's just underneath that $349, and the rest will be coming from Permanent Improvement Fund. So we need to identify in the grant application and commit those local funds for the local match, and so that's where we'll draw those funds from, and hopefully we'll get it because that's a nice offset to that infrastructure cost.
All right. Anybody else have anything to add from the council on the grant fund or the grant application? Hearing none, we will call the question. Councillor Deitch.
Aye.
Councillor Nelson.
Aye.
Councillor Kraus.
Aye.
And Councillor Buller.
Aye.
And I'll vote yes. Motion carries 5-0. Next, we have the GIS data license agreement between Minnesota Energy Resources and International Falls for access to the location of certain utility facilities and authorized signatures. Councillor Anderson.
I like the sound of that, Councillor Kraus.
Administrator Anderson.
Thank you. Just briefly, this is a standard license agreement that Minnesota Energy Resources has crafted, and it will allow the City of International Falls access to the location of utility information that Minnesota Energy Resources maintains. So we're asking the City Council to adopt the agreement. There's no fee to the license, and we're asking the Council to adopt the agreement and authorize signatures.
Chair would entertain a motion to approve the GIS data license agreement.
So moved. Councillor Deitch.
We have a motion by Councillor Deitch. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second.
We have a second by Councillor Buller, and then a second and a half by Councillor Nelson.
Just put down Buller nodded.
What?
Just put down Buller nodded like the last meeting.
Yeah.
I nodded.
We totally approved those minutes too.
Okay.
Yes, we did.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the data license agreement? Hearing none, Councillor Deitch.
Aye.
Councillor Nelson.
Aye.
Councillor Kraus.
Aye.
And Councillor Buller. He's nodding yes.
Aye.
And I'll vote yes. Motion carries 5-0. All right, next is the real estate conflict of interest certification. This was the only thing in my packet I had to go and talk to Administrator Anderson on because I did not understand it. So maybe it was more more knowledgeable for you guys, but I did not get it. So Administrator Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor. Very briefly, we lease the South Falls Postal Service, the post office at South Falls to the Postal Service because the city owns that building. One of the requirements that the Postal Service has is make sure that there isn't any real estate conflicts of interest. So we need to sign this certification form and return it. And really, it's quite simply just a question of the council because I don't have the authority to bind the city to this agreement myself. The city council is the one that enters into agreements. I just need to find out from our council members if anybody has any conflict of interest with the post office. And by conflict of interest, that would mean that you, your spouse, any family members, or any members that live within your household work or are connected to the Postal Service.
I receive mail. All right, my first question will be for Councillor Deitch. Do you have any conflicts of interest by having a family member or yourself working at the post office?
No.
Councillor Nelson, same question.
I do not.
Councillor Kraus.
My mother's a Postal Service employee. Does that count?
Does she live with you?
Not currently, so no.
And Councillor Buller.
No.
All right, and I have no conflict of interest either. So at this point, I think we all feel pretty confident that we have no conflicts of interest with the U.S. Postal Service. Chair would entertain a motion to approve and authorize those signatures.
So moved.
We have a motion by Councillor Kraus, the only one that could possibly have a conflict of interest. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Councillor Buller. You had something to add?
Mayor, I think we will disclose in the conflict of interest that one of the council members does have a family member that is a postal employee, so I think we do need to disclose that.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
If I may, to clarify the position, she is a sub on the motor route, so technically she could benefit, but she's not like a full-time employee or anything, if that makes sense.
We're just going to announce it, and if it comes back, it's on you.
Right, yeah, no problem, that's fine, I got big shoulders.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to authorize the signatures for the conflict of interest certification. We'll call the question. Councillor Deitch.
Aye.
Councillor Nelson.
Aye.
Councillor Kraus.
Aye.
Councillor Buller.
Aye.
And I'll vote yes. Motion carries 5-0. And then the next we have was an addition to our meeting is authorizing the City of International Falls to be a party of the Minnesota Water Agency Response Network. Do we have Director Brokaw online? I don't believe we do. I just was going to ask that question.
What if you're going to have to talk?
I hear Ted.
Do we? All right. With that being, unless we get him on the line, City Administrator, do you have some background information on this?
Just very quickly, again, this is a totally voluntary program, and it's essentially a mutual aid program for any natural or man-made disasters that might occur in the state. And so it's just an opportunity for us to share resources during emergencies across jurisdictions in the state of Minnesota. So there's no cost, and all participation is voluntary, but we're asking that the City Council consider adopting the standard resolution that authorizes the governmental unit, which is the City of International Falls, to be a party to the Minnesota Water Agency Response Network. And then the next agenda item would actually just be the mutual aid agreement, which again is a standard agreement. We're asking that the council adopt both of those. And again, it's prudent for us to move forward with this given the state of emergency that exists in the state. And if for some reason we would have problems with in our Public Works Department and we need to bring in aid from other jurisdictions, we have an opportunity to do that through this MNWARN mutual aid agreement.
Okay. All right. So at this time, the chair would entertain a motion to authorize the city to be a party of the Minnesota Water Agency Response Network.
I so move.
We have a motion by Councillor Buller. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second by Councillor Kraus. Discussion? Hearing none. Question. Councillor Deitch.
Aye.
Councillor Nelson.
Aye.
Councillor Kraus.
Aye.
Councillor Buller.
Aye.
And I will vote yes. Motion carries 5-0. So then the follow-up on this would be the mutual aid agreement for the Minnesota Water Agency Response Network. Same concept. Chair would entertain a motion to go into the mutual aid agreement.
I'll move for that one too.
We have a motion by Councillor Buller. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a second by Councillor Kraus. Any discussion?
We'll be authorizing signatures.
We'll be authorizing signatures as well. Is that fair to both the motion maker and the second?
Yes.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Councillor Deitch.
Aye.
Councillor Nelson.
Aye.
Councillor Kraus.
Aye.
Councillor Buller.
Yes. Aye.
And I'll vote yes. Motion carries 5-0. So now we'll go to any other business before the council. I did take a phone call from Councillor Kraus earlier, and we kind of discussed to have a conversation about something under boards, committees, and department heads, but I think if it's just an open discussion at this point, I think now would be a really good time to bring it up. The question has come up in the event of COVID-19. I know myself, I have received a couple of phone calls and texts. I believe Councillor Deitch has as well, and Councillor Kraus. And the question is coming up again about having chickens in the cities for eggs. So at this point, I'm going to hand it off to Councillor Kraus for some background information on the request, and we'll field a quick conversation about it, and we'll see how we want to move forward as a council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was approached by a constituent that wanted to know about the potential of having chickens for laying eggs in the city limits. I know, as you and I had discussed, that it is something that you can do if you're zoned agricultural, but at this point, given the new zoning, we don't have any areas in town that are zoned agricultural. So it's not technically you can't, but it's a situation where zoning would come into question. 3 months ago when the comp plan came out and we had all these meetings, as you and I had discussed, deer hunting was one of the issues, and it was kind of decided that no, that's not going to be a thing, and keeping chickens in town was another thing that it just kind of went by the wayside. But the truth of the matter is, the world is a completely different place than it was when we adopted the comp plan. And anybody that's been to the grocery store and seen the shelves bare and not having eggs and different things, this is an unprecedented thing in any of our lifetimes to have a situation like this. I'm not saying that I'm for it. I'm not saying I'm against it. I just want to have a discussion because we are living in a completely different world than we woke up in 3 months ago.
I agree with that, and we're just having a frank discussion. Anybody on the council that wants to weigh in on this?
Councillor Deitch.
Please.
Okay, I'm in favor of having chickens, limiting the numbers to maybe 2 with no roosters. It's a good backyard item that many children get involved in. A lot of cities do have backyard chicken coops. And keep it small, as I say, maybe limited to 2, with the understanding you cannot have a rooster, because roosters can be very disruptive. I've got chickens, and I know what it's like. The hens are basically a quiet bird. If they maintain the coop, there's not much of an odor. I can't see where it's a big problem.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes?
I do have a question, though. So, Councillor Deitch, you said that you own chickens. I don't know. Do you need a rooster to get the hens to start laying eggs? I don't know anything about it. You do not? No. Okay. I was confused. I didn't know if you needed them to,
So maybe this is going to end up being like a biology class. Because I didn't know that either.
If you're going to incubate them and raise and get little chicks out of those eggs, you got to have to rooster with them to fertilize the egg. Otherwise,
right, you need a fertile egg and you need a rooster. But otherwise, the chickens will lay eggs. They will not be fertile. You cannot hatch them. And chickens usually lay 1 egg a day. And the amount of eggs that they'll lay in the year depends upon the breed of the chicken.
All right. Councillor, anybody else have anything to bring forward on this?
I do.
Okay. Please, Administrator Anderson.
Well, I don't want to get into a lot of detail, but I will mention, as my understanding of this issue is it was discussed a few years ago with the City Council, and the City Council decided to defer making a decision and to go through the comprehensive planning process and the zoning ordinance rewrite process to determine if that's something that we wanted to allow in the city of International Falls. Currently, our ordinance prohibits chickens within city limits. We had suggested and discussed that in the new land use regulations and the new zoning ordinance that may get established is allowing maybe a number even up to 4, prohibiting roosters, and then only allowing them in a zoning classification that would be called something like rural residential or agricultural. Now, the comp plan's been adopted, but we have not adopted the zoning ordinance or the subdivision ordinance, and we just had emailed to us last week the draft copy of that. So staff is proofing that at the present time, and within the next 30 to 60 days, I would anticipate that a public hearing will be held at the Planning Commission level, and then subsequent recommendations brought forward to the City Council to adopt both of those ordinances. I did have a half-hour conversation with somebody today that was interested in doing that, and that's essentially the information I conveyed to that person. And so I think the majority of people were concerned, or some people were concerned about the fact that, we have blight issues in the community. If we have small lots, people don't maintain the coop. It can get odorous. It can attract foxes or other kinds of varmints. Is that something that we want to have in the city? So the idea of having it on larger lot, minimum sizes of 1 or 2 or 2.5 acres in a rural residential or an agricultural zoning classification seemed to make more sense, but no final decision was made, and that would be part of our zoning ordinance that we'll be considering here very, very soon.
Well, with that being said, I think we've had a decent conversation. Is there anyone else that wants to add to the conversation on chickens? I hear that we have a process moving forward, and we can definitely add the conversation of having chickens. I've never been against chickens. I can't believe we're still having this conversation. I've never been against the chickens. I've never cared one way or another. I think my biggest concern, and I voiced this to Councillor Kraus earlier, is we had a point on the council where we had made the decision or had a conversation that we would just not enforce it. We'll leave it on the books that you can't have it, but we won't enforce it. And my issue has always been either enforce the laws you have on the books or get rid of the law. So if this ends up being the new normal where we have people that are staying home, I don't know. We're in unprecedented times. I can't tell you I would vote yes or no for it, but I do think that at this point, just being where we're at, it's just a conversation that we should have. So if everyone's comfortable with just moving forward and having that conversation with department heads, and I don't think we need any specific guidance, but just moving forward with the conversation about a chicken ordinance. Is everyone on council okay with that?
Mr. Mayor,
please.
I do have one point to make. It's my understanding that this is the time of year, if you're going to order chicks, this is the time of year to do it. I'm not trying to put us proverbially under the gun or anything, but I do feel that maybe at the next meeting a discussion or something more would be in order, more formal would be in order, only because if you're going to order chicks, this is the time of year to do so. So if we were to say push this, kick this can down the road and come July, it could be at a time where it's kind of late. And again, as I noted initially, and you reiterated, this is an unprecedented in our lifetime situation, and I would like to point out that the council that had that discussion, you, Mr. Mayor, are the only member of the council that was on that council, but I too agree that if we're going to have a law, it needs to be enforced.
I think what you said on the phone is you're the old guy.
You are the old guy. Yeah, you are the elder statesman of the council. So I guess my point is, if we are going to move on it and actually take it seriously, I would rather see that happen sooner than later, just because I would hate to say, yes, we can do this, and we adopt it, say, in August, and you're already at the time of year where you're not going to be able to get chicks, and it kind of defeats the purpose. Sure. And I do feel in some capacity that this is an emergency order, if you will, just given the current circumstances, if that makes sense.
So now we've got to the point on our city council where we have an emergency chicken ordinance.
Well, yeah, the nomenclature aside, I mean, it's a matter of, I feel that the world is a different place. A couple weeks ago, you could go over to Super One and buy a dozen eggs for 88 cents. You walk into Super One now, good luck. So I'm just
fair enough, and we will. I'll have conversation with department heads and with the city administrator and see if we can't get something for us to take action or discuss at the next council meeting formally.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
You got to realize too, it is time to get your chicks right now, but you're not going to have eggs for another 5 months, 4 months. So,
right.
I mean, this thing is over with by then. It's defeated the purpose.
I love that the old guys on the council know how chickens are raised. Yes, Councillor Deitch.
Most chicks are ordered in mass. You can't order just a few. You order several at a time. I'm thinking, and I can't be quoted on this, that the individual and maybe others would be bringing in mature chickens already that are laying. As Councillor Bueller said, if they get a chick now, it would be fall before they started laying at the earliest.
Right.
My assumption is that they would bring in laying hens that are already laying from somewhere outside the city.
Right. Well, fair enough. We will definitely have this on our next council agenda to have a formal discussion about it, and we'll see what options we have moving forward and what we can put together, and we'll see what the council's thoughts are. Any other business to come before us? So then we will go to the reports of boards, committees, and department heads. City Administrator.
A few things, just briefly and informational. Number one, I just wanted to make it known that I verified through MnDOT that the state is moving forward with the road improvement projects that they have planned for 2020. So COVID-19 is not playing a part in changing those road construction plans. So Highway 53 is moving forward for start of construction in 2020. I visited with Brian Larson of MnDOT today, and he and I and the chamber president will be meeting on the phone April 14th, actually via Skype, to discuss the staging of the Highway 53 project, detours, and that kind of information, so that we can share with how to communicate that with the business community as well as the residents along Highway 53. Third, at our next meeting, I anticipate having a draft capital improvement plan that the council might consider. Last fall, you had adopted a capital improvement plan that included the infrastructure projects that we need to do, and I want to supplement the capital improvement plan with some of our major capital equipment purchases that we need to do over the course of the next 5 years. And again, the whole context for that is to have that in place when we move forward with a bond resolution, which I expect to be on the April 20th agenda for a bond issue in mid-May, and then closing sometime in mid-June. So that's the proposed plan for that moving forward. And then finally, our auditors and our finance officer, as well as admin staff, were working the last couple days last week, and then they'll be working this week on completing the audit for 2019. And the auditors are typically here doing that, but they're doing it remotely, so we've had to provide a lot of information to them in advance of doing that this week, and so that's underway as well. And we would expect to have a report for presentation sometime in June, as we have in past years. So I don't have anything else.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions for the city administrator?
Yes, Councilor.
That meeting on the 14th, is that the Public Works meeting that you're going to meet?
No, that's...
53?
No, the meeting on the 14th is with Brian Larson, the chamber, and Ken and myself, just talking about the staging and how it affects the businesses.
Via Skype.
Via Skype.
There will not be a Public Works meeting?
No.
Okay.
Councillor Deitch.
I assume, and this is for Ken, I assume we're still on track for secondary street improvement improvement, not the main highway, our side streets and so on for improvement, blacktop, maintenance, restructure, whatever it may be?
That's correct. We are moving forward. The engineers are preparing plans and specifications for advertising. I believe that will be on the April 20th agenda as well. I haven't confirmed that with the engineers, but Ted and I have been working with them, Ted primarily, and then we will have a bond resolution for the council to act on at the April 20th meeting. And right now that bond resolution would specify that we would sell general obligation sales and use tax bonds on May, whatever the second meeting is in May, to close on, I think it's May 18th, and then we'll close on or about June 17th. And by closing, that's when we would have the proceeds in hand in our bank account, and then construction would be commencing, after we award bids in sometime in May probably. So yes, we are moving forward.
Concerned about this virus, if that was affecting it at all?
Well, and that's why I brought up the fact that the state's going to move forward with it despite that. And as the mayor and Councilor Buller had pointed out, the bids that came in for the airport work came in very, very, very low and very attractive, quite frankly. They were nearly $3 million lower than the engineers' estimates on a roughly $15.5 million project. So we're very, very pleased about that. We hope that we get bids as good as that on our local street projects as well.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else for the city administrator? City attorney, do you have anything to bring forward?
Mr. Mayor, Council, I do not.
Okay. Department heads? The only one I know for a fact that's on right now is Kelly Myers. Do you have anything to bring forward?
Nothing at this time, Mayor.
Okay. Any other department heads that I'm not seeing? Because I have a handful of phone numbers on here that I didn't catch. Is there any other department heads that have something to bring forward? Hearing none, we will go to the reports of the mayor, council, committees, boards, and commissions. We haven't been meeting as, I'll just bring my report as the mayor. We haven't been meeting as committees, and I completely understand that given the set of circumstances that we're working with. This is the first time that we've done a Zoom meeting, and to me it seems like it's been going really smooth. I don't know, especially with Public Works, we have a lot of projects going on. Councilor Buller, would you be interested in working with Director Brokaw and the city administrator, and we can do some Skype meetings to get some of our work in place for Public Works?
I can meet with Ted and just find out what he would like to see on the agenda if we need to, or if we don't, hold off yet.
Yeah, and
we do have I had a couple of calls on some water issues that I was going to bring up at that next meeting, but I'll give him a call and tell him that we're not going to handle this meeting until this is settled down, so they'll have a chance to come talk to us then.
Okay. And in the event that any of the committees feel we are hard pressed to have something happen, I feel comfortable enough with Zoom and being able to work it like this so that we don't have to be in the same room. And I think if we have some pressing business, because the city does have limited staff on right now, but if we have pressing business or something that needs to come up, I think that we could have a meeting somehow if we have pressing business. I don't want to just have a meeting to have a meeting.
Right, neither.
Okay. And then the other thing is, and I didn't bring this up at our last regular council meeting because it just, given the severity of where we were with COVID-19, I didn't think it was important to bring up, but I did meet with the fire department about the civil service and the conversations that have been happening with the Charter Commission. It was a good conversation. It was a very long conversation, and they have some real concerns about getting rid of the civil service from the fire department. I would really like to hear more from what they have to say and what their concerns are, and I think we will ultimately be able to come to an agreement that they will back the city's position. It just may not be immediately. But I think they want to see what we are able to do with HR and how the city's moving forward. And if we move forward in a diligent manner, that we show that we will be able to represent them without having a civil service, that maybe a year down the road or 2 years down the road, they may be open to support us to get rid of that, the civil service. But they have some concerns, and I think that they were very valid concerns, and I'd like to keep that dialogue open between both myself and the fire department and myself and the police department if they have any concerns moving forward as well.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Joey's computer died. You want to know if you let him back in?
I don't know. Okay, just this once. We're going to keep him muted. All right. So that's that, and then the last piece is part of the audit that the city administrator had brought up. Probably about a week, maybe 2 weeks ago, you all should have received an email from the auditors asking a quick survey of anything that you have concerns about the city during the audit. I would encourage all of you to fill out that information. I would also encourage myself to do it because I have not filled it out yet myself. But just fill the information out. I've done it in the past. It takes no time at all. It's just if there's anything that you're concerned about with the city's finances moving forward or the audit itself. Anybody else have anything for boards and commissions? Okay, at this time I'm going to open it up to audience. If anyone from the audience has anything to bring forward. All right, hearing none, I do want to thank everybody that's been on the line. This has been the first city council meeting via Zoom. I think it went very well, and I do appreciate everyone's ability to adapt in this crazy time frame that we have. I do have one person that's talking, but I can't hear them. Hit *6 to be able to speak. It is *6, correct?
Yes.
*6 to be able to speak. I believe Mr. Corbett wants to say something.
Mayor, I just got a text from him also. He's trying to get online so he can hear. Yeah. Evidently he can hear us, but...
Try *6 one more time. I have everyone unmuted. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Hold on one second. We're going to get crazy. We can work this. Call Matt Corbett.
Calling Matt Corbett.
We can work through this.
Probably on Zoom.
All right, well, it wasn't a lack of trying. Anyways, we are going to close this meeting, but I do want to thank everyone for working through this. This is unprecedented. I think I have to be the first, well, I know I'm the first mayor of International Falls to have a meeting by myself. So anyways, I do thank you guys all. If Matt gets me information, I will forward it on to all of you guys of what his concerns are or what his question was or whatever it is. I will make sure that we get that information to the counselors. Again, thank you guys all. We will have our next regular city council meeting on April 20th, 2020 at 5:30 p.m. This meeting is adjourned.